Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to our California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundation session. We're very excited to have you all join us today and dive a little bit deeper into the new PTKLF that has been released. My name is Feliciana Frias. I am the project manager here at Wested. In charge of California Early Childhood Online CECO, if some of you are familiar with, and I oversee CPEN material that's developed here with Wested. I also have my co-presenter, Dr. Oznat Zor. I'll go ahead and see if she wants to say hello to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session and happy to be here and talk with you about the revised Preschool Learning Foundations, now called Preschool TK Learning Foundations.
And Haley, if you want to go on to the next slide. So we'll just get started. We just want to inform that this is a CDSS funded training. So just really quick, it is funded by CDSS. If you can refrain from taking screenshots or pictures of anything in the slides, please refrain from doing so. Go ahead, Haley. And it's also in partnership with CDE. There are partners in learning who brought in the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundation, also known as the PTKLF. And these were materials developed in a co-partnership. Again, my name is Feliciana. I'm the project manager here at Wested, and I have our co-presenter, Dr. Oznat Zor. She's the director of Early Childhood Learning and Development. And if you would go ahead, Dr. Oznat.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session again. Feliciana prepared the full session. I'll do the first 30 minutes to give you an overview and touch on some key elements in the preschool TK learning foundations that highlight the developmental perspective that is woven throughout and that guided the development of this document. If we can go to the previous slide, please. So the full name, California Preschool TK Learning Foundations, and you all may be familiar with the previous iteration, the Preschool Learning Foundation. So like Feliciana said, that's a revised version that has just been released. And it is covering the age range from 3 to 5.5. And it includes different early childhood settings in the way it is representing examples, and then also in the intention of who is using the standards, the foundations, California state preschool programs, other state-funded programs, private preschool programs. So it's really covering a range of settings. But before I go into the next slide and talk about what are the preschool TK learning foundations, what purpose they serve, I do want to kind of raise two questions for you to ponder about for a second before we go deeper into some of the key characteristics of the what we call PTKLF, kind of a shortcut for the preschool TK learning foundations. If you hear me saying PTKLF, we are referring just to this new document with all the different domains and foundations in each of them. So two questions may come to mind, right? If these are standards for all 3 and 5.5, all children from 3 to 5.5 years old, in what ways the foundations are written to reflect variability and diversity in children's development? You all work in programs and know that not all children develop the same way. But this is one challenge to tackle. And then the other one is that you may be thinking about is in what ways do the standards represent the diversity of children attending early care and education settings in terms of their ways of life experience, their cultural, socioeconomic backgrounds, exposure to a variety of languages, there is so much diversity in children, and yet we have one set of expectations, foundations that apply to all children. Then how does it all sit together? Well, hopefully after my short overview of the foundations, you will have a better sense of how we address those two questions in revising the preschool TK learning foundations. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So what are the foundations, right? We say revised PTKLF, but maybe remind ourselves of what they are. The foundations really provide us a clear understanding of the wide range of knowledge, skills that children, and in this case, age 3 to 5.5, typically attain when attending a high quality early education program. It's really a coherent set of expectations, right? And it describes the knowledge, the skills that most children at this age will typically develop in a high quality early education program. So it really provides you a set of goals, expectations for children at this age range. And we'll talk about two specific target age periods that we are addressing within the foundations later on. Let's go to the next slide. This slide summarizes for you the main points I want to make in the rest of the time together in highlighting the developmental approach to children's learning that I'm talking about. First of all, the foundations really aim to look at the whole child. We know that children develop across different domains. They develop their language skills, their literacy and skills, their math, their knowledge in science and understanding about their world. They gain skills in visual performing arts. So the idea is to be comprehensive, to take a whole child approach and address the different domains of learning and development. The second one is that we want to be very mindful about children and what they need and what makes effective learning. So in developing the foundations and the examples, or in revising the foundations and examples, joy and sense of belonging were important elements in how we thought about young children and the kind of examples we included to reflect the importance of bringing joy, providing developmentally appropriate activities, and fostering belonging. The third one is the alignment. We want educators in preschool to be able to see the continuity with the expectations in kindergarten. And so there is a special attention to alignment in structure and in content, yet keeping it developmentally appropriate with kindergarten standards. I've mentioned individual variation, and I'll talk about it in greater length. Also culture, race, language, and life experiences and how they shape children's development. I'll talk about how this is reflected and what we have taken into consideration when revising the preschool learning foundations. And we'll talk about the home language as a strong foundation for learning of the home language of English and in general. We'll take a quick look at how the foundations have been revised to elevate the role of the home language as a strong foundation for learning. Let's go to the next slide. As I've mentioned, we have taken a whole child approach. There are 9 domains in the preschool TK learning foundations. And as part of the revision, we have added 1 additional domain, approaches to learning. It's the very first one you see with an arrow. And then if you take a look, you can see that the 9 domains include approaches to learning, social and emotional development, language and literacy, and now English language development is part of language and literacy, and I'll talk about it, and also Feliciana will help you revisit this domain later on. Mathematics, science, physical development, health, history, social science, and visual and performing arts. So we really took a whole child comprehensive approach in revising and thinking about all areas of development. More specifically about approaches to learning, because you may wonder, what is approaches to learning and what's in this domain? So the content here is not domain specific, like learning concepts related to literacy or learning concepts related to math, but are really about the skills, the behaviors that are essential to any learning across all domains. It includes curiosity, for example, and taking initiative, engagement, being persistent and showing perseverance when working on a task, planning when before approaching any task. What materials do I need? What am I going to do first? It could be planning that a child is doing individually or with other children when they work together on a task. It also includes executive functions like working memory. So what cognitive processes they need to do all of these, including working memory, inhibitory control, right? Controlling their impulses, knowing to wait, and showing flexibility, for example, when they transition from one activity to another or from one setting to another. So all of these are foundational skills that apply across domains and are all represented in the new domain we now have as part of the PTKLF called Approaches to Learning. It's important to remember that even though we present foundations in individual domains and the whole document is organized with specific domains as organizers, that of course children draw from their skills and knowledge in one domain to engage in learning in another domain. Learning is integrated and learning happens simultaneously through different experiences across all domains. Obviously, children do not learn one domain at a time. This is our way of thinking about how children develop and allowing ourselves to have a spotlight on a particular area, but that's not how children learn and develop. They don't learn one foundation at a time or develop one. So, for example, I talked about approaches to learning, and you know, children expressing curiosity and interest or engaging problem solving are foundational to learning in all domains. And similarly, understanding, communicating through language, of course, is a crucial element of learning in any domain, not just the language and literacy domain. So this image is just a big reminder for all of us that even though the foundations are organized in individual domains, children are learning in an integrated way. Let's go to the next slide. Later on, you will have a deeper dive into what those foundations look like. And Feliciana is going to talk in greater detail about the organization. I just wanted to highlight for you here that when you open the documents for any given foundation, it will be housed in a big domain, which is then organized by strands and substrands. And what I want to focus here is that you'll see that 1.1, understanding and using vocabulary. This is the name of the foundation. Each foundation has its unique name. And so it will always be with a number next to it. And then the description of what it looks like and what it means comes below in two different age levels: early foundation and later foundation. The early foundations is for children 3 to 4.5. The later foundation is for children 4 to 5.5. So that in itself is a change because the previous foundations only went up till 60 months, and now the foundations go to 5.5 and covers this entire age period, 3 to 5.5. The specific description is right below and draw the expectations for children 3 to 4.5 in the early foundation and 4 to 5.5 in the later foundations around understanding and using vocabulary. Each of these foundations also have examples to help the reader, the user, understand what this may look like when children develop, demonstrate, engage in experiences that help them develop these foundations, where they demonstrate some of these skills and knowledge. In all of the examples across all domains, as I've mentioned earlier, one priority that guided our development was thinking about children and highlighting joy and belonging in learning. Children explore the world around them actively. You'll see how it's very developmentally appropriate. We draw on children's using their senses. Children's bring natural curiosity. We emphasize their previous knowledge, their cultural practices, activities they do within their families, communities, and what they bring as an asset to the learning environment and how to build on it. And you will see a range of examples. They are all playful learning experiences. Some may be illustrating more free play. Others may engage children in more guided play, where the teacher set a learning experience with certain goals. But whether it's free play or guided play, they all are playful, building on children's natural interest and curiosity, and facilitate engagement that children engagement and I would say and collaboration in some cases between the child and the educator, in other cases among other children, or examples where children do things on their own, but it's really to maximize attentiveness and self-regulation of children. So you'll see a lot of activities based on children's interest, hands-on, challenging, but just at the right level, and highlighting home and community connections. In addition, in the revised version, in addition to having the foundations, if you scroll to the different documents, one per domain, you will see that in addition to showing the foundations in a particular strand, sorry, we also have educator strategies. These are new additional pieces of information at the strand level for 5 core domains that include some instructional strategies, examples to nurture specific skills. So these are really tips, strategies for the educator. What you can do to support children's learning and development of the skills and concept on a given strand. So the idea was to also include some ways for teachers to support this learning. The foundations call for the goals, the expectations. The educator strategies are really for educators to think about ways they can promote children's learning, whether it's through learning experiences that they intentionally design, to engaging environments, by making home connections and community connections. So it's really helping bring to life, to more concrete strategies, some of the principles I'm talking about today. So these are educator strategies. Be aware of them, and you may want to highlight them to the educators you are working with. Another component that I've mentioned in that overarching slide has to do with alignment. Alignment in structure with the kindergarten standards. this alignment really allows teachers to draw the connections between the knowledge, skills, behaviors that children build in their pre-kindergarten years and what they are expected to learn in kindergarten and beyond. So just as an example, the math domain is organized according to the same areas in the Common Core. So Common Core state standards are the expectations for children kindergarten and above. And there is an alignment in structure. So you will see foundations in the same areas as in the Common Core, just of course, developmentally appropriate and meeting the needs of children 3 to 5.5. But you'll still see standards or foundations in the strands of number and counting, operations and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, geometry and spatial thinking. Another similarity in this domain is that in addition, the mathematics foundations also include mathematical practices, right? And these are the types of behaviors, the dispositions that allow children to develop knowledge and skills in mathematics. And the practices are identical to the standard mathematical practices listed in the Common Core, but for each of them, we added descriptions to provide teachers with the context and how these practices apply to young children. Because even though we have the same practices, of course, it would look differently for children in the preschool years and those in kindergarten and above. So this is just an example of how we aim for an alignment within the domain of math, but other domains also strive for keeping the terminology when appropriate or the organization as aligned as possible to facilitate continuity and alignment between early childhood and early elementary. Another component is individual variation in children's learning. I've mentioned earlier, we've talked about each child is developing, right, in their own way and at their own pace. Children may develop knowledge and skills at different times and have growth spurts in different domains. They don't necessarily happen at the same time within a child and across children. So some children may exhibit competencies that really go beyond the level described in a particular foundation. And as educators, you know that others may need more time to reach that level. So as children develop, they may show more advanced competencies in one domain than in another. And you may also see differences across children within the same domain. Each child's development progresses over the early years with some growth spurts and then some periods of kind of skill consolidation where you see less evident changes in their development, and this happens across domains at different points in time. So one thing to keep in mind is that learning and development is not just the same for across all children. And for this reason, learning and development here is presented more on a continuum. So let's take a closer look at the age levels and help you understand what we mean by a continuum, given that there is variability on when children demonstrate their skills and knowledge, right? Not all of them demonstrate the same skills, knowledge at the same time. We wanted to be inclusive of this variability, and therefore we have overlap that you may have noticed already. There is an age range that is overlapping. The early foundation covers the skills and knowledge that the children demonstrate between 3 and 4.5. The later foundation covers skills and knowledge that demonstrated by children from 4 and 5.5. So you can see that there is a period of 6 months that overlaps and appears in both age levels. Well, that was intentional. The overlap between the early and later stages is to highlight that learning and development is a continuum rather than tied to very discrete age levels expectations. And it is just more accurately reflects the variation in children's development as opposed to focusing on narrowly defined ages. So this is one change from the previous preschool learning foundations and the revised PTKLF. The two age levels are described in a different way, and there is an intentional overlap. I have also mentioned earlier that we were attentive not only to variation in children's learning and development and their abilities over time, but also another big focus in the revision of the PTKLF is in emphasizing the child's home culture, language, and background, right? Children development is shaped by culture, racial, ethnic background, language, and life experiences. And through their experiences in the home, in the communities, children gain knowledge and beliefs that help shape how they experience, understand, interpret, and make sense of their world. So what do we hope for? We want to illustrate learning opportunities that really build on children's cultural, racial, ethnic, and linguistic experiences at home and in their larger communities. So it's only through these experiences that we can bridge the home and the early education environment. And think about what I said earlier about joy and sense of belonging. It's by bridging the early education environment and the home environment that we can strengthen children's sense of identity and belonging. And of course, it brings joy in learning as well when they see themselves, their families, and their communities reflected in the learning they engage in. So let's go to the next slide. You will see that the PTKLF promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, represent the diversity of children in California, elevating their funds of knowledge, their families' funds of knowledge, illustrate that early education programs is really the context where diversity is honored and supported, and provide strategies for teaching that create safe and welcoming spaces for children and their families, right? Because only through that you build strong relationship, which then lead to better environment for the children and families we serve. So you will see that if we go to the next slide, we specifically focus on these four, I would say, lenses in bringing diversity. We looked at children from native nations, tribal communities, and thought about what examples we can include and how the foundations are inclusive of their ways of life and expectations. We have children from racially, culturally diverse backgrounds. We have children who are multilingual learners, and we are striving to be as inclusive as possible with all children, including children with disabilities, of course. So we acknowledge that these are not discrete, of course, and that children's experiences in the world are shaped by intersectionality between culture, language, ability, and of course, we attended to children's lived experiences within the context of their family and community, including considering the impact of trauma on children's development. So there was an intentional effort to ensure that the foundations, the examples, represent the children and families and educators in California. To this reason, we recruited several research experts with diversity, equity, inclusion lens. We included experts in language varieties and multilingual learners. We also invited educator focus groups with the lens on the experiences of Black children and families and tribal communities specifically. So it was a very intentional effort to be as inclusive and representative of the diverse population of children and educators in California. You will see it reflected in the foundations themselves, in the way the foundations are written, and also in the examples that they represent children's connections to the knowledge and experiences of their culture, the racial communities. We elevate multilingual children, and we show how children with varied abilities can demonstrate their knowledge and skills. So you'll see many different ways in which children can demonstrate their skills and knowledge. The last point I want to highlight in the context of attending to children's diversity and representing children's diverse backgrounds, including linguistic backgrounds, is a focus on the home language. The home language as an asset for children's learning and how it establishes that strong foundation for children's learning and development. We know from research that multilingualism is an asset that affords children's linguistic, social, developmental strengths for their home language, for English, but it's also a foundation for their lifelong learning in general. So with that approach, we attended to promoting, let's go to the next slide, promoting home language development, because home language is really the foundation to learning. Like I said earlier, it supports children's social and identity development, and it's the foundation for academic success. We have included here a special focus on the domain of language and literacy development. With this approach, it was important for us that language and literacy development is viewed more kind of comprehensively, including how children develop language and literacy skills in any language they learn or are exposed to. So this you'll see in the foundational language development. It is really to support, it is intended for the use of all children. It describes language and literacy development in any language, including English. It elevates the home language as a linguistic asset that multilingual learners bring to early education programs. So this is your domain of learning about how children develop and what are expectations for language development, literacy development in all languages. So it's written in a very universal way. The second subdomain under the big umbrella of language and literacy development is English language development. Here, the focus indeed is on English development, and it is intended for use with children who are learning English as an additional language in early education programs. So for children who speak another language and learn English as an additional language, we can look at their progress in learning English to the progressions described under English language development subdomain. So the one on the right focuses on English language development. The one on the left is about language development in general, and takes into account, of course, the knowledge skills related to language in any language children speak or develop. And then I would just end by saying that overall, in the language and literacy domain and across all 9 domains, we were very intentional in showing how children communicate their knowledge and skills through a variety of modalities. Sometimes a child will say something using language that indicate their understanding of a concept or the development of knowledge. And they may express it in their home language, in English, or in a combination of languages, as we know often happens with young multilingual learners. We also have examples where children demonstrate engagement and knowledge and skills in a nonverbal way, through drawing, through modeling, and creating using objects and hands-on materials and experiences. Children may need to use communication devices. Children may express themselves through movement, body gestures, and some children use sign language. So the examples you will see across the different foundations aim to show and reflect the many different ways young learners can communicate their knowledge, develop their skills, and engage in learning. We have covered the different key components that guided us as we revised the preschool learning foundations, highlighting the variability in learning, diversity, alignment in kindergarten, the importance of being developmentally appropriate and elevating joy and engagement. I want to end with a slide that really takes you to your own role as leaders, as administrators, as you go back to your programs. How should you think about the preschool learning foundations in using them within your own capacity, and what purpose it can serve in your planning, in working with educators, and in supporting young children and families? Think about the preschool learning foundation, the preschool TK learning foundations as a set of learning goals for children. So this really provides you the foundation for what you should support children in knowing, in developing, in doing across the different domains. And based on that, you will support educators and think about how your program provides environment, how your teachers provide teaching strategies to support children's learning and development across these domains. You may want to consider ways in which you introduce the preschool learning TK learning foundations to educators, caregivers, assistant teachers, everyone in your agency or program who works with children would benefit from knowing more about it and think about ways they can use it in their own planning as they design learning experiences, environments, and interactions for children. As a program lead, you may also think about how the curriculum I'm using aligns and support children's development across domains. In what ways the assessment we are using help us understand children's progress towards goals in the foundations as described across the 9 domains. And then if you sit in meetings and aim for continuity between what you do in early childhood and what your colleagues are doing, whether it's in kindergarten and early grades, that document can really serve as a starting point for a discussion to enhance preschool to 3rd grade alignment and to inform your own program continuous quality improvement, because it really provides you a compass, a set of goals for children's learning and development that can guide your planning, can guide your practice, and can support you to support your educators who work with children in making progress and engage in those joyful learning experiences to promote learning across all domains. I'll stop here. And I don't know, Feliciana, if there were any questions or if you want to build on what I just said in moving us to your own section.
Yeah, I'll take a few minutes just to see if anyone has any questions for you, Oznat.
I have a question. I was just wondering, so it said new domain for the approaches to learning, but in the previous for DR, so it's in DRDP, but it wasn't a part of the foundations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so now it's more aligned with the DLDP. Good point.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if there are no other questions, and if they come to you, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to go ahead and just move forward with the presentation as Dr. Oznat Zor said. We'll dive in a little deeper, but thank you again, Dr. Zor, I know, for taking time out of your schedule and for being here with us. If there are any specific questions directed to you, I'll make sure to write those down and send them your way and get back with an answer.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Haley, we can go ahead and move over to the next slide. So just once again, Dr. Zor did touch very broadly over the things that I'll be going into in the next few slides. But just to get started on these next upcoming slides, we'll be reviewing the organization of the PTKLF that is for children age 3 to 5.5 in early education programs. Go ahead and next slide, Haley. So that we know that the PTKLF provides guidance to all the California early education programs, whether it be federal and state preschool programs, such as your state preschool programs, Head Start, family child care homes, private preschool. I'm going to throw out a little poll right here just to kind of see who we have in the room, what kind of setting you work in. So Haley, go ahead and send out our poll. Take a minute to just answer if you work in any of these settings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. But it does look like I said, the majority of us are in federal and state preschool programs, some in private. And there is one, if you don't mind sharing, what's your other? What other type of programs are we in here? All right, just to kind of give everyone an idea of where everyone is at. Haley, go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so the Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations, they provide a comprehensive view of the development of children aged 3 to 5.5. They foster connections across domains. They promote intentionality to support children along a developmental continuum. They focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we will be diving in deeper. And as Oznat kept mentioning, they emphasize the learning experiences to foster joy and a sense of belonging. Next slide. Just to think about the diversity that we have here in California. This is a graph of the different demographics of the children in California. This is from 2022. And if you just take a look, half of our population are children of Hispanic ethnicity. We have 23% white, 12% Asian American, and then we have the 0.2 Black or African American, and I'm sorry, it's the 5% Black or African American, and 0.2% American Indian, Alaska Native. So just keeping in mind in our classrooms what that looks like. Hopefully we're seeing all of these kids represented in our classroom. And we're hearing all those rich languages and conversations in our classroom as well. Go ahead, Haley. So we know that the PTKLF recognizes that young children, they're curious, they're eager to explore. And so these early years are time of development in physical, cognitive, language, and social emotional. One thing that I want to point out is that the PTKLF doesn't use the term standards. They use the term foundations again, because that, that's the foundation. They're learning foundations, in their development. Go ahead, Haley. So the PTKLF describes the knowledge and skills, again, that most children aged 3 to 5.5 will develop in a high quality early education program, and it provides guidance for all the early childhood education programs within the state. Next slide. So again, these are the domains that we talked a little bit about. As you noticed, we do have the new approaches to learning domain. The language and literacy has two subdomains that Oznat mentioned, the foundational language development and the English language development. And we'll be touching a little bit more about those too. Go ahead, Haley. So what's new to approaches to learning? The approaches to learning domain focuses on children's skills that help them engage in learning, activities, problem solving, and collaboration with peers. Thank you. The language and literacy, again, we talked about that there's two subdomains, and one of them is going to be really about their foundational language skills, and then the other one focusing more on the English language development. Go ahead, Haley. We also touched base just a little about the age levels, that there's an overlap between the early and the later stages. It's intentional, right, to make sure that we're capturing that continuum in their development. And feel free again to stop me if you have any questions. I know this is just kind of a little bit of overview. Go ahead, Haley. This is a image of the old preschool learning foundations of the mathematic foundation map. Again, I'm going to highlight that in this version, we have the 48 months of age, and then and the 60 months of age. And go ahead to the next slide. And then here we have, again, the overlap of the years: early, 3 to 4.5, later, 5 to 5.5 years, 4 to 5.5 years, excuse me. We also have examples in the PTKLF. So each foundation level includes at least 3 examples illustrating knowledge and skills that children can demonstrate. For example, the first example on each foundation is aligned across the early and later age levels, and they are designed to represent children from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds, as well as provide diverse ways in which children can demonstrate their skills through various contexts, and then also just demonstrate their knowledge and skills in different ways. The matching icons indicate that the alignment of examples, again, go across age ranges. For example, the pink square icon in the early example, we'll take a look at it. It says a child looks briefly at a picture with 3 cats and immediately communicates the quantity by holding up 3 fingers. What this would look like in a later, it could look like a child looks briefly at a picture with 4 frogs and immediately signs the quantity 4. In the blue circle icon, early, a child looks at the crayons in their hands and communicates in Tagalog. I have 2, while holding the 2 crayons to show the teacher. Again, they're going into the later. The blue, during story time, a child puts their hand on the picture of the 5 ladybugs and communicates 5 ladybugs. Next slide. So each foundation, we talked about it being the children's learning is integrated. So even though that they are organized into separate domains, we as educators can see their learning and their development occurring across all of the domains. They draw from these skills and from their prior knowledge in one domain to be able to engage in skills and knowledge in other domains. I'm going to take some time to have you pull out the publication. Haley, if you have the publication link, if you can drop it into the chat. And I'm just going to redirect you to page 21 through 23. And once you're there, go ahead and give me a thumbs up with your little icons, or you can show your thumbs up. Again, we're turning to page 21 to 23. And I just want you to take a quick look. Haley, if you can actually pull that up on the screen so we can take a look together. I want to direct you to the interrelatedness of the domain. So go ahead and take a few minutes to read 21 through 23. I'll give you about 7 minutes. And as you're reading, pay attention to the skills and the competencies that you read happening across domains. And if you're done, you may not be, but if you are, there is an annotate function on your screen. You can locate that at the top where it says you are seeing Haley Dellinger's screen. There are some buttons that you can click. You can use the annotate button. If you're on your computer, there's also a little pencil at the left side to be able to use the annotate function. But feel free to either highlight or underline, or you can even put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Some of the skills and competencies that you read about. So again, just remembering, right, that it doesn't matter if a child is playing in the math section, if they're reading, we should be able to see all of this learning happening across all domains. All of their development should be able to be seen across all domains. Perfect, great. Yes, I love the color on this page. Okay, I'm gonna give you just one more minute to finish annotating. And feel free to, when you are meeting with your teachers, your staff, referring to this page, and that way they see those examples, right? That it doesn't matter if they're reading a book or if they're playing in science or engaging in science activities, that these are all the other skills that they can be demonstrating as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on into your breakout rooms, or Haley will, I'm sorry. And I just want to take 5 minutes and discuss your thoughts, your reactions, any questions that you could possibly have about the organization of the PTKLF, the new age ranges. We haven't quite talked about the incorporating the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know Dr. Oznat Zor did. So feel free if you have any questions regarding that. We will dive in a little deeper later on. But Haley, go ahead and open up our breakout rooms. And again, you'll have 5 minutes just to introduce yourselves if you haven't met each other already, maybe in a previous session. But take some time to talk about the organization, the new age ranges, and the DEI portion that was discussed briefly, or any other thoughts and questions you may have. Does anybody want to share out any of their thoughts or questions that came up in their breakout room?
In my group, we talked about how it's nice that the frameworks are gonna be showing like the new ages to 5.5, so that we get to see more of the continuum, like how you guys mentioned. And it's kind of one of our group members said that it's kind of given us a sense of what they kind of are versus where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's kind of what we discussed.
Right. Because we know that children all develop on their own, right? On different times. They're not just because they're 3 years old are they going to be showcasing all these skills and competencies, right? An early 3-year-old can look much different than a later 3-year-old that's already going to be turning 4, right? Great. Anybody else? Thank you so much for sharing. So now we're gonna take a quick few minutes to take a look at this video. We just finished talking about the interrelatedness, right, of the domains and competencies that we can see. I'm gonna share this video, and while you're watching the video, just keep in mind of some domains that you observe. Okay, we can write them down. Feel free to also turn to page 18 of your publication. That way you can take a look again at those domains and see if you can either circle or write some down that you observe in the video. Okay, go ahead and try again, Haley.
Want me to put this?
Can you hear it now?
Ahí,
Yeah.
y luego otro, y luego otro. ¿Cuántos tienes? Oh, y se cayó. The lion? Is that a lion?
Yeah, so valley and then it's get falling.
Okay. ¿Qué pasa si pones ese ahí?
It's get broken.
It's gonna be broken? You think so? Almost. Careful with Nini's hands. Okay, now. Oh. Let's put it again.
Yeah,
Let's try it again.
put this like
Mhm.
top.
Right in top.
Put it get out.
You think so?
Yeah,
Why? I wanna
Because
put that one in there.
that's the cage.
Okay. Almost. Whoa.
Yeah,
Again?
Yeah.
Otra vez?
I was close to that time.
I know. Let's try to make it taller, okay?
Try to make it taller.
Let's try. Woo! Put another one. Se cayó. Pon otro.
How about you put it up?
How about another one?
I don't think someone.
A ver, ¿tratas? ¡Ah! Se cayó. ¿Otra vez? ¿Otra vez? Aquí hay más. Aquí hay más. ¿Otro ahí? ¿Anthony? ¿Otro ahí? ¿Para ponerle soporte? Oops. Oops, sorry. Sorry. A ver, ninis, hay que hacer una. Este para acá. Este para acá.
Thank you. Does anyone want to unmute themselves, or you can drop it into the chat? What domains did you observe watching this video?
Math domains, language domains, and you can probably see approaches to
Yeah.
learning as well.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, Lorraine. LLD, SED, math, social emotional, exactly. Yeah, that was part of a big one, right? That we saw those relationships happening in there, math as well. I did hear approaches to learning. Yeah, that was another one. Anyone catch physical development? Anyone thought of physical development by any chance? It could be many, right? Just taking a look again. Just one simple activity, all of these domains, all of these skills and competencies are occurring. So thank you, and thank you for those that shared. Go ahead, next slide, Haley. So now we're going to be moving into the guiding principles. The guiding principles, the foundations we're in to highlight 9 of them to create supportive learning environments where children feel safe and secure to learn. We'll go in depth a little bit more in each one. Go ahead, Haley. So supportive relationships, children build a positive relationship with adults. They provide them with a secure base, feeling safe enough to explore and follow their interests. Creating secure relationships with adults also allows children to learn how to engage and communicate effectively and to express their emotions to adults and other children. Next slide. Diversity. Children strengthen their identity and belonging through responsive and inclusive learning environments and early education programs. Children come from different racial, cultural, and linguistic background and life experiences. Again, hopefully we are capturing that in our classroom and we see that. They also need learning opportunities that they are able to bridge from the home and their education environment. So hopefully we have like books, different things, from the home that they can also see represented in their classroom. Next slide. The home language, we know that it's an asset again to establish a foundation for learning and development across all the domains. A foundation for academic success is set by using multilingualism as a strength and to nurture the child's home language and build connections with the family and community. Go ahead into the next one. Family engagement. Meaningful reciprocal relationships with families support children's learning by sharing mutual responsibility for the well-being and education of each child. Teachers, administrators, early education programs should be engaging families through cultural and linguistic affirming interactions with a desire to learn with and from families about their goals, their values, and aspirations. Integrated learning. The skills and concepts and abilities that children learn in one domain support learning and development across all the other domains as we have talked about. Children's growing understanding and use of language helps them learn about new ideas, concepts, to be able to express emotions, solve problems, and connect with others. Strengths and needs. Learning experiences should be built from the child's unique strengths and they should be adapted to support each child's pace of development. And just remembering to recognize that some children may need more time than others, right, to reach a level described in a particular foundation. That this could be to different factors such as temperament, their race, their linguistic experiences, again, their living conditions, individual strengths, interests, and abilities, and so on. Multiple ways of learning, of knowing. Children may communicate ideas and express their understanding both verbally and non-verbally, right? We have children who communicate non-verbally in our classrooms. This could be through drawing, modeling, movements, and role play that they can express their ideas and their understanding. Children with disabilities can also use sign language, nonverbal gestures, and they can even draw pictures again to communicate. Learning through play. High quality learning environments value play and they provide those opportunities for play and for learning to happen across the domains. Play experiences, whether it's free play to guided play, those all provide context for interactions to occur, for creativity, for them to express themselves, do problem solving, and so on. And we know that learning through play also facilitates children's engagement and it maximizes their attentiveness and teaches them to self-regulate. Intentional teaching. Teachers intentionally design diverse learning environments that support all children's learning strengths and needs. We can do this by using knowledge of each child's development, their interests, their race, their culture, linguistic backgrounds that allow for meaningful explorations and playful learning. So now I'm going to break you off into your breakout rooms one more time. And as we went through these guiding principles, you can turn to page 15 through 17 again to go through these principles in your breakout rooms. I'm also going to drop a link, or Haley, if you have it available, the link to the Google Slides that you'll be using. So for example, if your breakout room, if you are in the Learning Through Play breakout room, you'll use the Learning Through Play slide, where you'll just jot down your thoughts, your ideas, considering those guiding principles from the perspective of an educator, a child, and a parent or their family. Again, you'll be using the Google Slides. We're going to put you into your breakout rooms. If you are in the breakout room that's called Learning Through Play, you'll look for that slide on the Google Doc, and then you'll jot down your ideas, thinking about the guiding principles from the perspectives of an educator, family, and a parent. Let's take about 10 minutes to read through these and discuss with our group. The breakout rooms, if there are no questions, they are going to open up in 3, 2, 1, open.
Hi, Feliciana. My group is still like we're unclear on the directions, so I came back here. Can you please give me the directions again? I think you're muted.
Sorry, Sasha, you're in integrated learning?
Yes.
So go ahead and go onto the Google Doc slide. There is a slide that says integrated learning at the top.
Yeah, we found that
So
one.
in there, you'll type, you can just jot down your ideas, thinking about that guiding principle on its own. Think about it from the perspective of what it could look like for a parent, for your teacher, your staff, or a child. Just throw out some ideas on there. I've seen people get creative and put pictures on there if you want to put in, share your screen in your group and add pictures to the slide. I see people just writing down a few sentences on what that could look like, just basing it off their perspective.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we're all back. I did see a lot of typing going on the slides. I saw pictures. Thank you for getting creative with that. I do want to see if I can get the, let's see. We will do integrated. We've kind of talked about that. Let's talk about the strengths and needs. Who was in that group? And if you can share a little bit about what was discussed in your group. So what does a perspective look like of strength and needs from a child, from an educator, from a parent?
For children, we put that each child is unique and develops in their own way at their own pace. For educators, effective teaching practices build on the individual's children's unique strengths. I think just, we got it directly from the
publication.
The publication. But I just, for me, it just thinks of, I keep hearing this, is we have to meet them where they are. Instead of expecting children to meet us where we want them to be, we have to meet them. So it's a lot of differentiation, just meeting their needs. And then for parents, meaningful collaborations with the families are built on respectful, reciprocal, trusting relationships. So we really focus on giving time at the beginning of the school year to really get to know the parents. I mentioned to our team, we're actually having our parent conferences today. And I have parent orientation today. So really taking the time to build those relationships with the families.
Yeah, that's so important, right? I was also sharing with another group, what do our interactions look like when parents drop off their kids, at our centers, in our homes? Are we having those positive conversations with them? What kind of information are we sharing with them? Do we have materials and handouts that are available in their home language? So just things to, consider and, letting them know that we are being mindful of their language, their culture, and things like that. It's just so important to those relationships.
Yep.
So thank you again. And again, just like you mentioned, Lorraine, I think the big takeaway too is, like I mentioned earlier, we could have an early 3-year-old, but we can't expect that 3-year-old to also be at the same, having the same skills that a later 3-year-old could be having. So thank you again. Okay, go ahead, Haley, if we can move on to our slide. Okay, so now we're going to explore how the PTKLF promotes diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And there's just such a big push for it. So I'm very excited at that, all of these new ways that they are showcasing. So this is just straight from the PTKLF. The PTKLF helps illustrate the learning and development of children from diverse racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, multilingual learners, children with disabilities, and children from Native nations and tribal communities. If you remember to Dr. Oznat's presentation, we're able to collaborate with tribal communities as well. Go ahead, Haley. So supporting development of by honoring their language, again, just like I mentioned, right? What kind of materials are we having in our home, in our classroom, in our environments that honors a child's home language? Their development is shaped by their language. Their home language supports their English development, and it is a strong foundation in one language that facilitates the learning of other languages as well. Supporting development by honoring their culture. I love this activity, right? Can anyone guess what they're probably trying to make in the picture? If it looks familiar to anyone. Some tortillas. And their development is also shaped by their culture, right? Children's cultural values can also influence their initiative and how they demonstrate curiosity. So also just being mindful, right, that some cultures, it's appropriate, to be, sitting quietly, not really asking questions. So taking that into consideration that there are cultures that, raise their children in those ways. Children with disabilities, children may express their emotions and engage in social interactions differently than their peers who are typically developing. And again, we did discuss that they are able to communicate either through using sign language, through pictures, or any other form of non-verbal communication. We're going to take a few minutes just to take a look at this video, how we can support inclusive settings.
Environmental support means altering the physical, social, or temporal environment to promote participation, engagement, learning, and cooperation. This will involve thinking about the whole room or outside play area environment, as well as thinking about specific areas like a tabletop. Programs that are implementing universal design are well positioned when adapting the environment for specific children.
The adaptations that are made enable the child to interact with or be supported by the environment. Examples include using a photo, picture, or object to signal the next activity or daily schedule, making boundaries for activities, such as providing a tray or box lid for tabletop activities.
You stand in that circle?
Or marking sections of the floor with tape or a playground surface with chalk.
Let's try it this close. Ready? Go. Yeah, closer works.
Alexander, can you get the timers for us?
Using a timer to help indicate when one activity will end and another will begin.
Can you give her another spoon?
Ensuring that there are wide aisles for children using wheelchairs or therapeutic walkers. Or for those who need other assistance in navigating the classroom.
100 minutes.
Wow.
And then I gotta go to my car.
Perfect.
Using child picture sign-ins to help children regulate how many children can participate in a specific activity or area at the same time.
I'm going to put you out into your breakout rooms. And after watching this video and hearing a little bit about, honoring culture and home language in your breakout rooms, if you can just have a quick discussion, maybe we'll put you in for 3 minutes and just how do you honor and talk about how you honor culture and home language in your classroom? How do you ensure that your environment is inclusive, right, to different abilities. So we'll go ahead and open up the rooms and we'll give you 3 minutes to discuss. Go ahead, Haley. Thank you. Welcome back. Just as we start to close off our session, I know Oznat had mentioned as well. So just keeping in mind of how teachers can support children while using the PTKLF. There are sections that have been added across all of the domains, which demonstrate different strategies on how to scaffold those certain skills within the foundation levels. I know we talked about the importance of that, right? About differentiating our instruction to best meet the needs of each child, right? And as we kind of conclude, as an administrator, in your role, just quickly take a minute to write down a little action plan. I'll give you about 2 minutes. What are some next steps that you will be taking, in the next 2 weeks or then maybe the next month of really diving into the PTKLF and supporting, your staff to be able to support children in their development? What are some steps that you'll take to kind of gather all this information that you learned and implement back at your center or your home with the staff that you work with? I'll just share out that, I'm guilty. I was a teacher, and the older preschool learning foundations, they're going to accumulate dust, on your bookshelf. So maybe you make it your plan that you either, if you want a printed copy, you get access to print your copy, or just really making sure that your teachers have access to the publication, whether it be on their phone, through an iPad, computer, and actually using those foundations, to guide your lesson planning, right? To help how the teachers guide their lesson planning and things like that. So no worries, no shame. We're humans. Oh, I do see some in the chat. We're including PD, excellent, during our staff meetings to look over the updates, and we'll share the link for the teachers to look over the updates. Great. That makes me very, very happy. Thank you so much. Go ahead and go into the next slide, Haley. So as we close out, I want you to also just think about your key learnings today. Think about something new that you learned, maybe something that you appreciated or something that inspired you. I can already see the inspiration for the PD to happen, across our centers, our homes and those environments. And then we'll go into our next slide. These are just some QR codes. As I mentioned, California Early Childhood Online, CECO, is an online website where you can find more professional development opportunities. We do have the PTKLF introduction module available for you to go through, as well as the PTKLF approaches to learning domain. So feel free to check those out. It's an excellent professional development opportunity. You can sign up for free if you don't have an account on CECO. And likewise for CPEN, you can find a lot of more information and more materials on the PTKLF. And I also dropped into the chat, I'll drop it one more time, the link for the where you can find more videos and presentations on behalf of the CDE. Here's the link for that. You'll be able to find all the other publications on there as well. And I did get a question about getting credit for this professional development session. There is on your Google Slides, sorry, not the Google Slides, on your Google Handouts, your logistics document. there is a link to be able to sign on to the California Workforce Registry to be able to get professional development hours for this session. If you are having trouble doing so, because I believe you should have signed up 24 hours before, feel free to send me an email. I'll drop my email in the chat. That way we can add you on our end. And I'll go ahead and thank you one more time. I know I went into the breakout rooms and I heard that there's unexpected visitors and parent orientations happening. So I do appreciate you being here and taking time out of your schedule. I wish you the best of luck. Again, feel free to just, if you have any further questions, feel free to use my email, and hopefully we can provide some answers. So thank you one more time. Have a nice day.